Story time. So sometime ago, this story was shared with me, and I will share later, probably much, much later, not during this actual story. We'll see who shared the story with me. But let us begin. This also might die, so in the middle of the story, it might make like a doo-doo-doo noise, okay? Actually, let's just avoid that. Let's just turn it off. There it is. So, sometime ago, we're going to call this lady Veronica. Veronica was a young grasshopper, a young woman. Long before she had started a family, before she had started her career, she was just living her best independent life. And this was around the time that she had just moved out. And I need y'all to understand, especially some of the women closer to their 30s and 40s, what it feels like to truly be on your own for the first time, out of your people's house. Nobody watching what you're doing, where you're going, who you're bringing over, where your friends, your boyfriend. You just being you. However disgusting or however exciting that might seem to you, remember that time. So Veronica was, almost revealed who this person was. Veronica was shooting the shit, just living her best life. Not necessarily freely dating, as in like dating anybody that would ask, but feeling more free to date freely, if that makes any sense. Like not being concerned about, I'm gonna have to explain to the family why I'm coming home this late, or why I wanted to stay out later, or why I came home the next morning. You know, like things like that, that it just feels better to do it when you don't have anybody to explain it to. Unfortunately, that also leads to dumb decisions. You know what I'm saying? Because you get so happy in that freedom that it ultimately leads to some poor decisions, and then you slow down a little bit, and then you start to really pay attention to what it truly means to be free. Anyways, back to the story. I digress. So she had a particular way that she took to work and a particular way that she took to go home. And she always said that she tried to keep the routes different. That way, nobody, whomever, would know her next move. And I respect it. You're a young woman taking the subway. I respect it. So, that all being said, one afternoon or evening, she was getting ready to get on the subway or get on the train while at the subway, obviously waiting on the train. And this gentleman had came up to her and asked her for her number. He had expressed interest, obviously tried to shoot his shot. And she said, no, I'm, not really in a position to date. I'm already seeing someone. And she had said that she had no idea why she told that man that, because she wasn't seeing anybody. She wasn't tied to anybody. She could have taken that man's number. She could have given the man her number. They could have explored things and saw where it went. And she just didn't want to. It wasn't, and I had asked her too. I was like, was it a matter of attraction? Were you simply just not attracted to the guy? Because that's fair. That's fair. Attraction is a large part of things, okay? Anybody in their right mind could say, I need to be attracted to your mind. That is beautiful. Perfectly fine. But let's not eliminate the fact that there needs to be a degree of physical attraction. It is what it is. And I asked her, and she said, nope, she has no idea. She just answered freely and loosely, and it didn't even feel like a lie, even though she was lying. No, sorry, not interested. I'm not in a position. I am seeing someone. And he said, okay. Took it well. Very polite. Cool. And everybody involved in this situation, including me listening to the story, thought, okay, well, that was just the end of that. Maybe just one of those things that you just include in the story to make it more robust. No. Remember that, man. So where she worked at the time, she was working as a secretary. Veronica was working as a secretary, not her career now, her work at that time. And she was also going to school. And the secretary, or the office that she was working for as a secretary, was a doctor's office. So maybe about 2 or 3 weeks had gone by. She hadn't seen this man, completely forgot about the man. She goes into work one morning, pulling up the schedule, getting ready to get the day going. She calls the gentleman's name to tell him to come up to the front so that she can check him in. And lo and behold, it's the guy from the subway. Nothing awkward or strange or weird about it. Now the guy just sees where you work. But there's no reason to think too much of it because the exchange was polite. You know? It's not like he somehow discovered that her working there equates to her being a liar. It was a simple run-in, you know, like, oh, hey, I remember you from the subway. Yeah, how you doing? How you been? Okay, cool. Let me check you in. The doctor will see you soon. Cool. Come on out. Come on out. Come to find out that he wasn't actually there to check in to be seen. He was there to check in to have an interview. Somehow somebody that was either filling in for Veronica or maybe the doctor tried, but they didn't schedule him appropriately. They didn't schedule him on the doctor's personal schedule to be interviewed. They scheduled him as a patient. The mix-up was cleared up. He had went in for his interview and things apparently went well. He gets hired. And they don't necessarily develop a friendship. They just sort of develop an acquaintanceship. And from that acquaintanceship, he did begin to try to shoot his shot again. And at one point, Veronica says, how did you even find out about this job? I didn't even realize we were hiring. I mean, I'm sure that the office is happy to have you, but I didn't realize that we were in need. And he said, no, I guess I just saw a posting for it and, I could use the extra money right now. And that was that. That was the end of that conversation. And so Veronica's like, okay, cool. Now we need to name this gentleman. We'll name this gentleman James. So James and Veronica ultimately ended up working together. And as I said, James did continue to shoot his shot. From that point, though, James seemed to show up in other places that Veronica frequented a little bit more frequently than what Veronica was comfortable with. So Veronica had a grocery store that she went to. Everybody, when you move out on your own, you find your grocery store that you shop at to get the best deals to shop for what you shop for. So yes, adults have their grocery store, okay? And she would find herself running into James a little bit more often at this store. Of course, you run into someone, oh, hey, how you doing? Funny seeing you here, whatever. It gets more and more weird when you realize that you had never seen James before the subway, politely denying him. And now all of a sudden you are seeing James everywhere. And not only that, but James works with you. And you had no idea that the office was even hiring. Nobody told you anything. James just got hired. So, one afternoon, Veronica finally said, okay, I feel like I'm interested in looking into this James individual, but not because I'm interested in James, but because something seems off. Now, during this time, there was no social media. So looking into James really meant asking whomever they speak to at the office on a consistent basis, like the people that they shared spaces with. What do you know about James? When did you even consider meeting a new person? How did James seem to you? Just sort of politely asking questions. And then, of course, asking James questions. What made you want to work here? just doing her own subtle investigation. Like, she didn't just run back into the office and start interviewing people with the pen and a notepad, you know? So fast forward, guess who calls Veronica one afternoon? My grandmother. So yes, Veronica is somebody that we all know very well. No, it's not me. So my grandmother calls Veronica and she says, "What's been going on with you?" And Veronica says, "Not much, really." And my grandmother says, "No, something's up. Something's off. Something is a little strange." And so then Veronica finally says, "You know what? You're right." And she starts to tell her what's going on. And so then my grandmother said, "You need to be careful. Minimize the conversation. And this little subtle investigation that you plan on starting, don't. Keep it cool, lay low, mind your business, don't give in." And so Veronica's like, what does that even mean by don't give in? There's nothing to even give in to. And so my grandmother further explained, saying, just remember that I told you this. Just don't give in. So then the next day, or maybe next couple of days comes by, James decides to bring donuts to the office just to treat the office. And Veronica remembered what my grandmother said, don't give in. So she's like, I'm not going to eat these donuts or cookies or whatever it was, whatever the sweet treats were. I'm not eating this. I really don't want to tie myself to James in any way, shape, or form. And then she's like, am I being dramatic? And then she's like, nah, this whole situation is seeming a little strange. And so fast forward, James runs into her. They're not working together at the front desk. James works towards like the back, working with paperwork. Veronica works in the front. And he's like, hey, did you ever get a donut? I brought donuts for everybody. And Veronica lies and says, yeah, I had one. It was good. Thank you so much. Okay, great. The day goes on. Towards the end of the day, it's time to close up. What does James say? I know you didn't have any of the donuts, but I appreciate you trying to appease me. Huh. Some time goes by. Veronica doesn't even ever end up telling my grandmother this part. Some time goes by. James decides that he's going to bring drinks in from Dunkin' Donuts for everybody. Everybody just gets a regular old iced coffee. This time, Veronica simply says, sorry, I don't drink coffee. James says, I saw you having iced coffee the other day, but if you don't want coffee from me, that's fine. At this point, Veronica says, I'm going to say something. I'm going to say something to the supervisor. I'm starting to feel uncomfortable. This whole situation is beginning to feel more and more weird. I don't like it. She says something to the supervisor. The supervisor says, yeah, I see where you're coming from. I just need to pay closer attention to it myself. And it has to get to a point, unfortunately, where it's outrageously uncomfortable for me to let him go. Really uncomfortable response. What does outrageously uncomfortable mean? Whatever. Fast forward, James finally says, do you even really have a man? Or did you just say that because you weren't interested? And to that, Veronica says, was this job even hiring? Or were you following me? Veronica, while telling me this story, told me she doesn't even know what possessed her to even ask that question. The question just fell out of her mouth. James said absolutely nothing. His head jerked back. He didn't respond, scrunched his face, and just went back to work. Just went back to work. She calls my grandmother. My grandmother says, listen, whatever this gentleman is trying to do, it's completely dependent upon whether you give into it. So what you're doing is good. Lay low. Keep it cool. Don't act like you're losing your mind or that you're getting uncomfortable. Just stay calm and it won't work. You ultimately give it power. Don't. Stay cool. And from that point, it seemed like James was repeatedly trying to make Veronica more and more uncomfortable. And she remembered what my grandmother said. Stay calm. stay cool. Don't give in. Don't show that you're uncomfortable. Don't show that you're bothered. Just brush it off. And in time, the supervisor says, you know what? I've seen some things myself. I am coming to you to let you know that, we are putting in paperwork. We're doing what we have to do to officially let James go. Veronica says, cool, whatever. Maybe a couple of weeks go by. One day, James is working there. The next day, James is no longer working there. James is no longer popping up in any of the spots that she usually frequents. James disappears just as quickly as he appeared. And my grandmother said, this is what I'm telling you. You just have to lay low. You just had to be cool. Had you ramped up, my camera died. But the last thing that I was saying was that my grandmother said, had Veronica ramped and read, they call it ramping and reading, as in behave in a dramatic and outrageous fashion, that would have been the fuel that James would have needed to continue operating in the fashion that he was operating, and operating with whatever it was he was operating. I don't want to use any big fancy words, but in other words, what my grandmother was trying to indicate was that James didn't use a natural way to become aware of Veronica's surroundings. And whatever way he was using, the success of it was dependent on Veronica's reaction. And because Veronica's reaction was calm and not dramatic and not what one would expect it to be, whatever James was trying to do simply wasn't working. And I want to interrupt this story to say that I would love for you guys to click the link below, the Seed and Spark link, to donate to my campaign so that I can turn my project Zyla into a short film. Any amount counts. Literally, if everyone watching this video donates $10, it'll be perfect and probably allow me to reach my goal. Chef's kiss, perfect. $10. If you want to give more, beautiful. It's the sweet spot though. If all of you guys donate, it'll be a beautiful, amazing gift. And since April is my birthday month, you could do it for a birthday gift to me. Yay! Okay, back to the story. So, in other words, it's as simple as be careful, take it easy, take it one step at a time, and trust that everything will reveal itself in time. Everything. Nothing can stay hidden for forever. It can't. And we also have to remember that if we ultimately try to take control of a situation that we obviously have no control over, it won't lead to you having control. It would lead to you having less control. I've learned so much. I don't eat from people. I don't drink from people. It's such an interesting thing that I've learned simply from hearing the stories of my family and what they've had to deal with. And not just my family, but simply other people that didn't even realize what was happening. So on that note, I'm just going to say be really careful out there in these streets. And don't forget to donate to my campaign. Thank you. Have a lovely, lovely evening. And I promise I have not forgot about the Shadow of a Doubt series and the Epstein Street series. Those are originals, like I'm writing those as I go. So the next episode, I know that it's far removed from the last episode, but because I've been so focused on so many other projects, I haven't been able to devote to those quite as much, but it hasn't been forgotten. So it's coming. Thanks, guys.